All right, welcome to the HuntLeague podcast. Today, I've got a special guest coming from Utah. We've got KC Davies. Casey, you work with SEVR Broadheads, which happens to be the broadhead that I've been using the last couple of years. Not just the broadhead, but also the field points. So you guys make incredible match grade field points as well as
Yep.
broadheads. So love to dive in. Before we get started, I just want you to give us a little bit of an introduction. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what your hunting background is, kind of how you got started in the hunting space.
Yeah. So I'm Casey. Been with Sever for almost a year now. Going in June will be a year. Um, been hunting since I was 6 is when I shot my first deer. So
Pretty
just
good.
grew the passion from a very young age. My dad was very obsessed with getting me out there and shooting things versus getting himself shooting things. So I attribute a lot of that to him and my grandpa. Shot my first deer alone when I was 14 with a rifle. Was just absolutely obsessed with deer hunting. That was like my big thing. And when I turned 18, I started working at the Shields here in Utah. It just opened up the year before I turned 18, and came into it, was a big rifle hunter, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm the guy that rifle hunts. And then I met the archery manager. His name's Dustin Whitwer, and he kind of took me under his arm and was like, hey, I want to teach you about archery because this is a place that you can sell and you can help me out, and you're learning a new skill as well. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the constant practice or the thing that I just wasn't good at it and I wanted to be good at it, but just absolutely fell in love with the whole process of archery. And so became a full-time tech there when I was 19 and did that for 2 years. And then I ran the archery shop in Sandy down here for, what was that, 7 years. And had a really good relationship with the guys at Sever and the guys at Easton. And I'd always told myself I'm not leaving Shields, but if
Yeah.
something comes along that's in the industry, I'll leave. And so last year, Tyson, my boss, he gave me a call and was like, "Hey, we need somebody for Sever. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Well, I'll throw my name in the hat." And next thing you know, I'm here and loving life. So
Okay. Now I'm seeing what looks to be a shotgun on your arm, not a bow, not an arrow. What
yeah,
does that represent?
got the broadhead on there. So, but the shotgun, I'm a big bird hunter too. Um, so I've got a short hair at home that once archery season's over with, so usually about early November, we just start chucker hunting and pheasant hunting from there on out. So that's kind of my second passion is chasing birds around.
All right, and that's for those of you that aren't watching this on YouTube that are just listening to audio version. You can see Casey's got that shotgun on his right arm, and then the broadhead kind of on the inside part of the forearm. Okay, so you didn't really get into archery till you're about 18. Is that right?
Yep, yep. So I had buddies that did it, and I would go, join them in camp and go hike around with them and stuff like that. But it was just one of those things. My family didn't do it, so it was one of those things. I was like, oh, we're just rifle hunters. We grew up, I got the rifle that my grandpa passed down to me, and just gonna keep doing that. And so I just never sparked an interest until somebody took interest in teaching me, which was really cool. I could see that somebody actually cared about what I was going to do with my life, and it was also that same interest. So the two combined together, I think, is what created that addiction. So
No, I love it. So one of the greatest like hunting moments, you said this that your dad just kind of poured everything into you. Just he loved seeing you become successful when you were young. I would
yeah,
say that's been a big part of me. Like the last couple of years, like if you ask me the highlights over the last couple of years of hunting, it was watching my son right before he turned 10 get his first pig.
And we were just with the pigs, and I just blasted one of them.
Another son get his first deer. JJ, the one that got the pig, ended up a year later getting a bear up in Oregon with a rifle. He got his first elk last fall with a rifle. We started shooting a bow heavily last year when, and like every week, we would go to the 3D archery range at the Air Force Academy, which
hmm
is if you have you ever been to that range by chance,
I
Casey?
I haven't. No, I actually haven't been to Colorado Springs,
Oh, we got to change
unfortunately.
that. The next time you come to Denver, Colorado Springs, I've got to take you on base. They made it a little bit stricter. It's on the Air Force Academy. It's one of the best 3D archery ranges in the country. I think it's the largest 3D archery range, like by like landmass and how much area they have. It is
Yeah,
absolutely incredible. They have multiple courses. They've kind of got your harder kind of tack style course that's, got steeper angles, longer shots, those types of things, all the way to like, big squared out targets with like pictures of animals and stuff. It's just super cool. And we keep score, go with a group of guys, usually every Thursday night through the summer. Got my son into that last year, and I cannot wait to take him archery hunting. But one of the things that I'm running into is this coming fall, he's going to be a freshman in high school, and he's like, Dad, I think I'm going to play football this year. Now, I love that. I want him to play football, but it also is like a dagger to the heart, because I'm like, how do we do our hunts, bud? Like, those are like some of my favorite memories.
Yeah,
So,
my dad was really good at convincing me out of that. So I mean, he was the salesman of all salesmen when I was 9 or 10 years old or whatever, when the football signups were coming in. He's like, well, you could do that, or you could go hunting. He's like, that all interrupts hunting season. He's like, you're not gonna be able to go on Saturday opening morning because you're gonna have a football game. And so that, like, well, I'm not playing sports. So played basketball in the winter, and that was about it. So
yeah, that's what, like, my older boy, he's 16 right now. He's a big kid now. Like, I mean, he never wanted to play sports all growing up, and I was like, great, we're gonna go play. We'll have all these hunting memories. Well, puberty hit him, and all of a sudden he was like, I want to see what this body's got in it. He jumps into football. He was all about it last year. This year is his sophomore year, and before, you put in your application stuff in April. So his freshman year, I'm putting in April of his freshman year, and he's going into his sophomore year. He's like, Dad, do not put me in for anything in the application. We're going to win state, and it's going to take us all the way till after Thanksgiving. And I'm like, that's what every kid says, Sam. I'm going to put you in. And sure enough, they won state last year. I was like, well, dadgum.
yeah.
So he's happy, and I'm happy to have all those memories. I know this year I'm having to cut a lot of my time short because of that football. But when you told me that for you, that you made that intentional choice, I was like, all right, this guy is all in when it comes to hunting, willing to kind of give up some of the things that most young men throw themselves at kind of in pursuit of this sport. And sounds like straight out of high school, I mean, you just went straight for it, jumping into Shields, archery manager there. How's the transition been going from kind of retail to a specific manufacturer?
Yeah, that was a big difference. I didn't think it was going to be as much of a change as it was, but Shields was very, like, fast paced. You have one in Colorado Springs there, and it's just, I mean, it's constantly bumping. You're constantly doing something, especially once you get in like the management positions. So I mean, you'd come in there and you'd start at 7:30 in the morning, you'd be done at 5, and you're just constantly moving. I'd hit 15, 20,000 steps a day, constantly moving around, versus now I'm in an office. It's more strategy thinking. It's more, long-term type stuff, and it's a lot more desk work, which was a big change. But honestly, being able to talk about just hunting all day, day in and day out, because all the phone calls that come in, like, hey, what do you recommend for shooting an elk, or what do you recommend for shooting a whitetail? And so it's just fun getting into those conversations, and that's my only conversations I have, versus sometimes they'd put me downstairs and I'd have to talk about men's running shoes or something, like something I'm not passionate about,
Yeah.
and something I'm not like super giddy about. And so that kind of started to get old after a while at Shields. But I mean, I miss the people. That's the big thing, is the culture there was huge. Really tight knit group. All my really close hunting buddies are all still Shields employees. So that's hard to leave. But man, being in this environment and meeting people like yourself and all the industry connections, you can't beat it.
So did you have to move to start working kind of east in Sever,
No,
or is it same town?
same town. So Sandy is at the end of the valley. Have you been to Salt Lake?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the Hunt Expo. So
Oh yeah,
Sandy's
I met you in Salt Lake.
Yep. And then we're up here right by the airport. And so I live right in the middle of the valley. So it went from a 10-minute commute to a 15-minute commute. So it wasn't too much of a difference as far as that goes.
Okay, let's dive in to Broadheads. I want to tell you, like, I kind of ran into you and I said, look, here's how Sever came into my universe. I was kind of not, I was just kind of one of those guys like, no, I don't do mechanicals. I don't want any like potential like fail points or things like that. I just figured like a fixed blade, a solid fixed blade, that was going to be kind of where I landed. Well, I had two different things that kind of shifted the way that I was thinking. One is I had 1 year where I had taken my bow to the shop like 3 or 4 times, and I was constantly dealing with a tuning issue where I couldn't get my broadheads to tune, with my field points. And
Yeah.
I was struggling. I ended up kind of getting a different bow kind of on the tail end of that. But prior to the season, what I was dealing with, every time I was shooting, the plane of that broadhead was pushing everything left. And I know you can kind of move your rest. And I mean, I tried
Yeah.
it. Like I tried it. I mean, from whatever I could try to change, I'm
Yeah.
moving, I'm yoke tuning. I'm doing everything I can to get that alignment. But I'm telling you, the further that target went back, the more left it was drifting. It was left and down. And I was like, I cannot get my broadheads to group with my field points. I tried multiple broadheads. The only broadheads that I could get to come close were mechanicals. Like mechanicals were flying similar to the field points, but if I was trying any type of fixed blade, it was down and left. And so that was an issue. And there's going to be a lot of people probably listening. They're like, you can tune that, you can fix that. And I'm like, I know. I thought that too. I tried multiple times, and that was my first season that I hunted with that. And that's probably that's a long time ago. Like we're talking like 10 years ago, 2015, 2016, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, 2021, I was on a dream mule deer hunt. This was the first time I've ever specifically I'm going to go chase a big mule deer. Like I've never been the guy that's like chasing a trophy. It's always been like, yeah, you just take the opportunity. I just love being out hunting, meat hunter, that kind of thing. Well, this was one of those windows where I was like, all right, I'm burning a couple points and I really want to get a good mule deer. So I put all my energy, effort, all that summer I spent scouting, came up on a really big stud. At the time I saw him, I guessed him at probably like 180 inch, but this was like early July. And I was like, he's got some room to grow. Like he's still growing. He was kind of funky. Yeah. I'll show some pictures of when I first saw him and then pictures of the harvest that I did not get. But I was there when he was harvested. That's for darn sure. But he was harvested with a SEVR Broadhead and 60-yard shot, less than ideal placement. And when I saw what that broadhead did to that deer, because they let him sit overnight, I came in the next morning. I was like, hey, would you mind if I just came in? I've been chasing the same deer all summer. The guide and the guy that shot it were super gracious with me, said, yeah, come on, bring your boy out. So we met them in the morning. We helped them kind of track it. It died probably. They thought it ran off. It didn't even make it to the edge of the woods. It just fell in the scrub, kind of oak and brush and sagebrush.
Been dead for a while, yeah.
They could have walked right up on it and it was dead. But like the entry wound, like people talk about an exit wound, but the entry of that thing, it never exited. Like it went into that front shoulder, which is a tough shot, 60 yard, just drove right through that front shoulder and I mean, dropped that thing within 40 yards. It took off on a dead sprint and was dead before it even got to the edge of the woods. So when I saw the devastation of a SEVR Broadhead, that was the next thing, because I had kind of retuned my bow, got it to where, all right, now I'm shooting everything together. But
yeah,
that's when it was like, okay, you can not only get the accuracy out of these mechanicals, but you can also get this kind of wound channel devastation. So tell me about your experience. I mean, you sold stuff at Shields for years, so you saw every kind of broadhead that hit the market. What is it about SEVR that you got connected to?
Man, so I actually shot a deer with a SEVR when I was still working at Shields back in 2018, because I had a guy give me one. It was one of the guys that worked here. I went to a total archery challenge. I was like, hey, what's this? And he's just like, here, try it. And so he gave me one, and I went and shot a whitetail in Missouri. It was my first ever whitetail I shot. And the thing I noticed was how short the blood trails were. The deer only made it 35 yards.
Yep.
And so working at Shields, it was kind of hard because we didn't sell SEVR. SEVR is just a direct consumer company. And so I wanted to shoot them, but I just couldn't in my heart because it's not something I sold.
Not a brand that you represented. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd always in the back of my head, I was like, man, if I could always sell SEVR here, that'd be awesome because I would shoot them. But I mean, I ran through fixed blades like you did. I've ran through a couple different mechanicals that I just wasn't stoked about the way that they put a hole in something, just because of some of the differences. And I'll go into that here in just a second. But I was kind of thinking when you were with the fixed blade stuff is like, yeah, you can tune that out, but then you're essentially taking your bow out of tune to put it into tune to something that's, well, yeah. And so your field point's your most perfect arrow. That's how you're going to get the most perfect tune. And once you start trying to tune it to something that's causing it to fly erratically, then your confidence goes down because you're not really sure where that's going to hit. You can't take a fill point out and go start shooting a fill point and still practice. You're having to just shoot your broadheads at that point, which can get expensive. Yep. And also you're losing your confidence aspect, in my opinion. So some of the cool parts about SEVR and from the differences of the other mechanicals is, first off, is the blades are hidden inside the ferrule. So super, super streamlined design versus other companies. Most mechanicals, they sit kind of like that. Yep. And so you have, a lot of material sitting off there. So the streamlined design I like for accuracy at long ranges, like I'm talking 100, 110 yards. Other cool part that separates us as soon as those open up is this is what we have a patent on, is that lock and pivot technology. And so the way that works is if it's going into an animal and it comes in contact with a bone or a shoulder, most other companies are broadhead stuck like this. Yep. And so what happens is you have a hard thing hitting a hard thing. Well, something's got to give. This is lighter than a bone. So it's going to ricochet this thing off to the other side. And that's where you get those shots that you're like, man, I swear I just pumped it right through the heart, but it came out in the guts. Is most likely it was a deflection. It hit, ricocheted, and started, going off its course. So that's one thing for penetration and for, clean pass-throughs that I really like. The last thing, and this is huge, and this is what we don't talk about enough, in my opinion, is that practice lock.
Yep.
And so the fact that this is your practice head and also the head you're hunting with is huge, just for the confidence aspect of it. Because I can go out, double check behind our building here. We have a 100-yard range out there. I can throw these on, see how they're shooting with my field points, get that confidence in my broadheads. And that's just, you can't beat that. Versus I used to shoot a competitor that was mechanical that had a head that kind of looked like it. And I was a geek about archery. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll shoot this, get it. And I was like, oh man, it's shooting right with my field points. It's perfect. And I was like, I want to see what one of the actual heads will do. And I was like, I'll just sacrifice it. I know it's going to wreck it going into the target, and made sure it was a great shot at 60 yards. And it was about 4 inches to the left and about 2 inches low. And I was like, that's not going to work. And so, you have to start playing with that. And it just ruins your confidence at that point, in my opinion.
100%.
And so,
what you're talking about, that set screw, and so explain that a little bit.
There we go. So you can kind of see that set screw or that empty hole behind there. So in the package, we provide a screw that can just go right through that, and that locks those blades up. So it goes in those little holes of the blades, and it makes it so this head can't deploy. And so it's saving your target, it's saving your blades. So you're not having to replace them or damage them, because targets can be really hard on blades, especially when it's going in there and it's just an immovable object and you're trying to force something into it. It's just something's got to give. And so the ability to not ruin a head and still practice with it is huge.
You're not doling the blades at all, because the razor part is not touching any part of the target. So if somebody's like, well, I don't want to use the head that I'm actually going to hunt with on the SEVR, it's 100%. And your packaging, it's like, what does it come with? Like, everything that you guys do is first class. Like when you order some stuff from SEVR and just get them, I've been so impressed. And not that packaging matters. That's not going to help you kill an elk any better, but everything comes that you need. Like, you just get a little box like this, and you got the rubber O-rings that go around. You've got the set screw.
The set screw. Yep.
And you're set.
And that was
right to the field.
Our big thing was, where we're not in a retail environment, we don't have that retail to sell it for us. And so we just want it to be an experience. Even though we're not there in front of you, we want that unboxing to be a really cool experience. And so a memorable experience. I know that sounds silly, but you pull one of those boxes open and it just feels cool. Yep. I don't know why. You just pop one open and they have all lined up inside there, and it just looks pretty, and it's a really cool experience. So
I would completely agree. And even just the labeling on the outside of each individual broadhead, because each individual broadhead comes in its own little package, and I can see right away, this is the 1.5, versus a 2-inch. And for me, and I'd love to get your opinion on that. I've used the 2-inch for deer. And I'm like, that's a whitetail blade for me. The 1.5-inch is what I would choose to use. And I know you guys came out last year with more or less a hybrid where you have some bleeders now. I have not bought the bleeders yet. So tell me a little bit about bleeders. Are you a bleeders guy? Or are you kind of like a straight guy? Or what are we dealing with?
So, there's two different applications for it. So I like the bleeders for elk in like larger game, um, because you're not sacrificing penetration, especially with that 1.5" hybrid. It's because you're still cutting like a really small package, and that's why you probably like the 1.5" is because it's got really good penetration at longer distances because there's less surface area. Well, we actually found that with the addition of the bleeder blades, so if anybody can see that, we just took our standard 1.5, and then in the center here, we put a 0.7" fixed or bleeder blade on there. And what we've noticed on that is it's actually increasing penetration because it's causing less resistance for the mechanical blades to come through. So this portion's ripping open first because it's the first one to come in contact, the bleeder blades. And then as soon as it gets around to the mechanical portion, there's less tight skin for it to come in contact with, and so it's able to cut and go deeper. So we actually have in our ballistic gel, we got 2 inches more penetration out of the 1.5 hybrid than we did the standard 1.5.
See,
Which
that's excellent. That's
blew me
very
away.
cool.
Yeah,
because you would
So
think
going
you would think more surface area because now you got a 0.7 might slow it down, but it's not big enough to really create that, and it's actually paving the way for the rest of
for
it to come through.
correct, which is like one of those things you don't really think of when you're designing it, but when it comes out and you start playing with it, you're like, oh yeah, that's happening. That we can see it happening in the gel. We can see what it's doing. And so, I mean, for me to get a complete pass through at 70 yards with a 2.2" head on a mule deer was astronomical. I mean, I was just blown away by it. And so, for me, like that's the thing. I want penetration. I want 2 holes. And so to see that happen, I'm like, the hybrid's the way I'm going to go from here on out.
Very cool.
It's just, and then elk. I mean, the big reason I like it for elk, especially the 1.5" style. So not a lot of people know this, but elk's rib spacings are anywhere between 1.75" and 2 inches. So the gap in between solid bones is about that. And so my fear, and I'm just a worst case scenario kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I sit there and I think about what's the worst case that could happen, and I try to avoid that. And so for elk, with having a 2 inch, is if you squared up on a rib on that, and that was a 2 inch broadhead, you're going to lose a lot of penetration. Versus an 1.5", regardless of where you hit that, you're going to be able to get that pivot to go around that bone and squeeze through that rib gapping. And so for elk, I like the 1.5" specifically just to get through ribs.
That pivot point is what makes all the difference in the world for me when it comes to mechanical, because you can shoot a mechanical, and I've seen mechanicals come out on the other side of deer and elk where you just have blades missing. My brother-in-law used, it would kind of be like a hybrid between a mechanical and a fixed blade. He used a Ramcat. It's a 3-blade, but it kind of has a little bit of a pivot. Well, when we pulled it out, it had one of the 3 blades still attached, and it was a less than ideal shot, like kind of quartering 2, so it went through a lot of bone and then buried itself in the back hip. So I have never been like, ooh, I love the idea of these mechanicals, because you hit those big, thick, heavy bones on an elk. But the difference is the pivot system that SEVR has. When you're saying there's an 1.5 to 2 inch kind of rib gap, you're saying that's broadside. You turn that animal a little bit, and like that's not an 1.5", but like that, having that pivot point as it hits this rib first and then hits the next rib, you're still going to get pretty straight and not that ricochet penetration that you were talking about.
And there's a really old video, and I'll have to send it to you, but when SEVR first came out in 2018, they did a slow motion video of the broadheads going through gel with a bone implanted in it and showing how that pivot works as it goes through. If anybody wants to watch it, it's called Deflection Sucks on YouTube. And it's a really good example. It's kind of grainy, but it's a really good example of another competitor going in and showing how it ricochets, and then how ours kind of goes past the bone and keeps going through. So
I love what you guys have built. Like, I've become a believer. I was kind of anti-mechanical for a while, just like, no, you just got to use a fixed blade. You got to use something solid. Your elk are just way too thick, big bone, heavy, big animals. Got to go solid. And the iron wills have never disappointed. So I'm not saying like you can't still do that, but what you gain with the SEVR is there's no tuning like between a broadhead and a field point. Like, I've never had an issue. Like, if you shoot a field point, you'll hit the knock of your other arrow if everything was the same.
Exactly. And that's, the kind of the benefit of the SEVR broadheads is that, like, for newer hunters, especially, like, nothing's more frustrating than when you're 2 years into hunting and you're trying to figure out how to just get close to animals, but then you're throwing in, oh, now I've got to figure out how to try to get this pointy thing to hit where I want it to hit. And so it's just a giant mess of like, you've got so much going on. Like, might as well eliminate a variable and make life easy for yourself and focus on other things like practicing getting close to animals and, e-scouting and stuff like that versus sitting here sweating about trying to get your broadheads to hit behind the pin.
I just shot my first NRL hunter match, which that might sound totally unrelated, but it was incredible how over 300 to 900 to 1,000 yards, how much the wind is impacting a bullet that's traveling, 2,600 to 3,100 feet per second. That same thing is slowed down exponentially. I mean, instead of 3,100 feet per second, you're talking about maybe 300 feet per second on a fast arrow for hunting. If you were to put it in bullet terms like this BC, like if you've got a planing surface of a fixed blade versus a sever, are you seeing a significant difference in kind of wind drift, if you will?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, that's the whole reason guys run 4mm arrows versus 6.5. Like, you don't see hardly anybody shooting a 6.5mm arrow. And that was all there was 20 years ago because guys are noticing that even just, I mean, you're talking a 0.5 millimeter or even a millimeter difference on the arrow shaft is causing that much wind drag. I mean, you're talking a broadhead going from this to this. That's a lot of surface area. So to your point, you're adding a lot to the front of it. That's causing that arrow to plane out and fight against your fletchings. So that's the downside there. So you're just a lot more surface area.
That's the downside of a fixed blade, but not a sever.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. There's all upsides. I mean, that's kind of the nice part about mechanicals. People will claim that, like, well, what if they don't open up? And it's like, man, if you can get this not to open up, as long as it's going that way into an animal and not going sideways or anything like that, it's going to open up. That's kind of the nice part about severs is they're pretty much foolproof. There's no springs, there's no real locks. We have a small silicone O-ring that retains them. There's no issues of those not breaking. They're gonna break with the blades. Yeah. And so that's the nice part about, like, again, back to sever, what people tout with the problem with mechanical is the not opening aspect of it. And it's physically impossible for these not to open up.
Yeah. So any type of medium solid impact is just boom, it splits that rubber O-ring instantly.
Yeah. Our engineers have done testing, but it's 3.8 foot-pounds of kinetic energy to fully deploy our heads. And so, I mean, a 40-pound bow, 24.5-inch draw is putting out like 10 times that amount. So, I mean, we recommend like the 1.5 and the 1.5 hybrid for low-pound shooters because we have some ladies here that are like 35 to 40 pounds, and they're still getting pass-throughs on hogs and whitetail at 20 yards.
I mean, pass-through on a hog with a low impressive draw weight, like those are thick skin. Those are tough animals. They have big shoulder plates, all those things.
Yeah. They're good shots. Those ladies are good shots. But yeah, it's cool seeing that and the fact that it can go to that low of a poundage and still be a usable broadhead, which most other mechanicals, I mean, you're pushing 20, 25 foot-pounds of kinetic energy to fully open them up. And so you're sucking a lot of that energy out on impact for those low poundage shooters. And that's why you don't see low poundage shooters shooting them a whole lot.
Gotcha. Hey, do you have any thoughts because when I was ordered some in the past, I was kind of debating like, all right, stainless, titanium, any idea, like, is there a reason why you would use one over the other?
So we mainly use titanium just for weight and size aspects of it. Steel and titanium are very similar as far as durability goes. I'd call them about sixes. The problem is the stainless steel for the same size is about 30% heavier.
Yeah.
And so that's why we only offer the one stainless steel head, which is the Robusto, which is going to be 150 grains because we just can't get the weight down. But we found titanium, we can still get it light enough and still have the same rigidity to it without having to jump into like 150 or, a heavier grain weight that not a lot of people shoot.
Talk to me a little bit about like the grain weight side. Because, the last several years there's been, I would say 3 to 4 years ago, like you had everybody talking about like higher FOC, shooting heavier up front, all of those things. And there's plenty of ways that you can add weight to the front if you're dead sold on it, with outserts and inserts and things like that you can put into the arrow. Like you're working in the industry, you see this, you talk this, you live this every day. Do you have kind of some parameters that you're saying, man, if I'm just building my ideal elk arrow, what general grain weight do you like to use for the whole setup? I'm not talking about just the
Yeah.
broadhead. I'm saying like give me an arrow build that you would say, all right, if you were to give me like, look, I want to build an arrow to go elk hunting this year. What is your arrow build? What would you suggest
Man,
for an elk arrow?
I was gonna say I've been kind of all over the board. So last year I'd never done a heavy setup before. I'd always been right in that like 450 to 480 range. That was like,
Okay.
I find that to be kind of like my sweet spot is what I like. But I was like, man, I always hear people talking about super heavy setups and like running, 500, 525 grain setups. I shot my elk and my deer with a 535 grain arrow, which
Yeah.
is the Easton FMJ long range. It's super heavy sucker.
Yeah.
And I guess it got good penetration. My problem, and I actually switched away from it, was my pin gappings.
Yep.
God, that thing was dogging going out there. Like when I shot that deer at 70 yards, I mean, I could watch that arrow just like lob into him, and it was just like, God, that kind of sucks. And for
And
me,
the
it's like,
the time it takes to
oh
get
yeah,
there.
it's stressful. So I was shooting right around, I want to say 270 feet per second with that setup.
Yeah.
I just built 5.0s. I had a Coos deer hunt earlier this year, and I was like, there's no chance I can run these arrows. And so I built the 5.0s. They're about 435 grains now, which is a little bit lighter than what I've typically ran, but I'm getting close to 300 feet per second, and my pin gappings are a lot tighter.
You went about 270 feet per second to close to 300.
Correct. And I haven't shot anything with that yet, but as far as like my pin gappings go out to like that 80, 90, 100 yards where you're shooting some of those smaller animals like a coos or an antelope, my pin gappings were a lot tighter. So if I was off a yard, I'm not completely missing. I'm, still hitting somewhere in that center mass.
Yep.
So that's for hunting aspects. I think that's the best route is finding that sweet spot where you're not so heavy that you're dogging an arrow out there, but you don't want it so light because you start busting over that 300 foot per second mark and stuff can start to get a little squirrely on you pretty quick.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're dealing with you're having to go to a lot stiffer spine and all those things if you get that super heavy. Now, I'm kind of on that. All right, I bought into the super heavy, and I'm not even say I bought into super heavy. I bought into medium heavy, like because I've got a guy that's shooting like 300 grains up front plus an outsert plus I mean his arrow setups I forget if they're like I mean it's like a missile, like not speed wise, but I mean it's so heavy and thick up front. I want to say he's somewhere between like a 700 and 900 grain arrow, and he in order to step it up to feel like he's going to get his pin gaps, he went to a 90-pound limb, and like everything about that is over the top aggressive to me, and I'm like, I don't think I want to go that route. This arrow setup is pushing. It's in the high fives, and it's heavy grain per inch. It's a micro diameter arrow, but I've got a lot of weight up front here, and it is shooting 265 feet per second, 263. I put it on the chrono. It is so freaking slow, and I'm bottoming out on my pin at about 70 yards before I make contact with either, it's like you have this much gap as that gets smaller, but you're going to start hitting your housing. And I'm like, no, I mean, I can shoot to 80, but I know that 80 is putting it on my bubble. I know that 90 is putting it right at the bottom of my, like below the housing of it. And it's like, no, I mean, I can make a shot at 90 yards, but I don't have a pin for it. My pins stop really about 70.
Which you never know if you're going to take a follow-up shot, like sometimes you see guys that have to put another one in them. They have one opportunity. It's at 95 yards. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to take that on my first shot, but like if there's an animal that I put an arrow into already, I'm going to try to put another arrow into him.
Yes.
And so
100%.
Having the pins out to those ranges, because people ask me all the time, like, why do you set up to 120? And it's like, because you never know when you're going to have to potentially throw another arrow at something. Yeah, I'm not going to go on a stalk and be like 120, here we go. But if I have to, I'm gonna have to take that shot. So having something that can get out there and still, have a good punch at those distances is what I like.
100%.
So.
And I think for me, I'm looking to shift back the other way. Like, going back to that NRL hunter match, the reason why people want to go these lighter bullets, or faster speeds, a lot of times is because if they have their dope, and they're dialing off by 0.1 or 0.2, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
there's more margin of error to hit that target, which all they care about is getting that impact on steel. But if I'm off by 1 or 2 because my speed was, or my, BC speed, something wasn't right, or I didn't range it just perfectly, I'm off on my range by 8 yards. That can be the difference between a miss and a hit. And when you
Yeah.
start speeding up that arrow, your pin gaps get tighter, but you get a little bit more forgiveness because your arrow is going to get in there. So if you were off by 3 yards, if you were off by 5 yards, you're still making contact and you're probably still close to that sweet spot versus that super heavy arrow setup. Sometimes if, you think, yeah, it's right at 45 yards. I've got that shot all day, but then it's 53 yards and it's a complete miss. It just falls right underneath the animal.
Yep. I've had that. That was 3 years ago with a 485 grain arrow. I was off by 2 yards and grazed a bull up in Idaho. He even lurched. I was like, oh, we hit him. And it ended up just grazing. There was hair on it. That was about it. So
it's devastating.
And I don't know why I didn't think about it then. I was like, it just didn't hit me in the brain then. I was like, oh, the heavy arrows are still good. And now that I'm like in archery more and I'm, focusing on it, it's like, I've seen tons of dudes shooting 400, 425 grain arrows, getting complete pass-throughs on elk at 50, 60 yards. And so it's like, don't necessarily need that crazy weight.
Yeah. That 400, 425, the other thing is that puts you at a good spot where you can use that for 3D archery. If you want to go shoot a tack event, you want to go shoot something else, like that 400 to 430, that kind of range.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the sweet spot where I'm going to get back to. Like, I've just like, you know what? I've enjoyed shooting the heavy arrow. I think they're great for what they are, but I think there's middle ground here.
I was going to say not a lot of people know either. And this might get a little too in depth, but our engineers are super smart here. Like, they're absolute geeks about archery. Like, anything that you can think of, they probably have an answer for it. And so I went to them about 2 or 3 months ago and I was like, is there like an optimization chart for arrow weight with a, certain setup? Because like, I'm stuck at 28.5 inches, 80-pound draw. Like, I can't grow anymore. I can't lengthen my draw length. I could go a little heavier, but like, I'm kind of capped out of where I'm at because of my body. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh yeah, I actually have a chart for this. And so you can plug in all these different arrow weights, what your base setup is. And what not a lot of people know is kinetic energy comes a lot more from your bow than it does from like your arrow setup, because whatever your bow is shooting, that's kind of your max potential. And so you start playing with all these arrow weights and like your kinetic energy only changes by about 2 to 3 foot-pounds of kinetic energy going up and down. And so there's kind of a sweet spot. And what he told me, he's like, I found as like a general rule of thumb is like, if you can get 285 feet per second with whatever arrow weight, he's like, that's like the most like perfect sweet spot for forgiveness, penetration, and kinetic energy. He's like, that's, for some reason, that's like the middle ground for an adult male. It's like 285 is the sweet spot.
I like that. I'm going to be running this little chrono. I want to figure out, all right, what do I need to do to get to that sweet spot? Because I want to get back up. I want to get my speed back up. I want to, I've got to make some tweaks to kind of get back to that sweet spot where I'm like, no, I just want my pin gaps. Now, I'm kind of on the longer end of that spectrum. I'm about 31-inch draw. I'm about 6'3", so I'm right at the edge of my bow's draw length.
Yep.
I'm not shooting that 80-pound. 72 is where I've got it kind of all my twists and everything tuned up to about 72 pounds. And that seems to be like, I don't really want to go heavier. Like, I know that I like strength wise, like, no, I know I can draw back an 80-pound. Like, I've drawn back a 90-pound bow. It's not about like how strong I am, but I've also been in those situations where I've held my draw for close to 2 minutes, and that is an eternity. And then until failure, like I had 6 bulls. Oh, this is bringing back a nightmare. I had 6 bulls within 40 yards of me. And the first one came up over this ridge, and I drew, and I knew the bulls that were coming. And there was one that I was like, all right, I'm waiting for this one. And of course, this one, I think he was like the 5th or 6th one to come over the ridge line. And when he came over the ridge line, all the other bulls are just milling around eating. And of course, he stops behind a bush. Then he's kind of like frontal to me. And I'm like, I don't want to take a frontal shot at 40. And then finally, as he starts rolling around and comes broadside, I mean, truly the moment of truth where it's like, okay, here it is, here it is, here it is.
Yeah.
it just lunges forward. And I was shaking so bad. I was like, I don't even know if I could have made the shot because I was hurting. But I'm like, I don't want an 80 or 90-pound bow for that specific reason.
Coming from a guy that's had an 80-pound bow the last 3 years, like I actually get a new set of strings put on this week, and I told the kid that's doing it, I was like, knock that thing down to 72 to 73. I was like, I'm so tired of shooting 80. Like I can do it, but man, it's just like those situations. You like don't think about it until you are in those situations where you're sitting at full draw for more than 30 seconds, and it's like this sucks. And so
Yes, it's terrible.
it's like make it a little bit easier on myself and just shoot a 70-pound bow.
And still get all the kinetic energy, still get everything you need. Like the speed gap is actually not as great as what I thought it would be going from 72 to 80. I've done both.
It's 10.
And I'm like,
yeah,
72 is like, it's this marginal difference. I'll just change my arrow setup and get the same speed that I would get going from 72 to 80 pounds.
Correct. And that's like foot per second with poundage is about 1 foot per second per pound. And so, I mean, you're only gaining 10 feet per second going to an 80. It's more draw length. It's 5 feet per second per half inch. And so, I mean, if you wanted to boost your draw length or boost your arrow speed, just up your draw length, but you can't really do that.
You can't grow your arms.
And so that's one of those kind of things that, guys are obsessed with speed and they don't realize that they're kind of capped out where they're at. Like there's not a whole lot you can do with it.
Well, that brings us a little bit towards the conclusion of where I want to end today, because one of the things I'm super excited about, I have elk on my brain all the time, year round.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't help it. I think about it and dream about it. This past weekend, I had Tucker Schmidt from Vortex and his wife, Carrie. They came in. He was the one that kind of helped walk me through my first NRL hunter match. And
nice.
But like the whole time that we're together shooting rifles, and he's kind of Vortex's PRS match director guy right now. He was talking to me and going, like we applied for his elk season. He's going to come out with a bow. And the whole time that we're doing this match, like all we can really think about is sweet September.
Archery elk hunting.
It's like September is coming. We're talking about what we're sleeping in, where we're hiking to, like, all right, what kind of elevation? Because we know it's going to be high. But the Sweet September League is a league inside the HuntLeague app that is all about archery elk hunting. It starts June 1st, which sounds weird because it's called Sweet September, but it starts June 1st because inside the app we count your days shooting at the range, we count your days working out, we count your days scouting, everything, all the work that goes into that moment of September. That's what we're really here to celebrate. I'm super excited to kind of make the announcement to introduce, we're bringing SEVR into this Sweet September League.
We're stoked to be here.
Man, am I pumped about it. Because I really don't think that you can beat this, right? Well, you might say beat it with the hybrid. Throw some bleeders on, and that's the best. So they're right there. You can't beat that one. But this year, the winner of that Sweet September League is going to get a really cool SEVR package. And you guys not only make broadheads, but you make one of the best targets I have ever used. I mean, that is like, if people look through the feed that I use, what I'm shooting into every day is that SEVR. I don't know, it's 24 inch or so, 24 by maybe
21 inch.
21. It is an awesome target. Like I've shot, I can say hundreds, but it's probably, it's like maybe
close to 1,000.
Like, and it's still, I'm not beating it up with fixed blades. I'm not beating it up with anything, but I've shot these into it. And then primarily I'm using your guys' match grade field point. And if people haven't done these, I mean, how much you guys sell these in a 3-pack? And they're like $5 or something. There's
$5 for a 3-pack. And I know that's kind of like it seems like a lot, but man, you put those on your arrows and they spin so true. I mean, it's just, it takes all the variables out of a crappy field point. So
yeah,
those things are nice.
Now, the only time I've had to replace is like when I've gone to the 3D range and there's like a steel piece, like holding the target up, and I like bang it up and it just bends the tip a little bit. But it's like, no, buy yourself, do yourself a favor. Not only are they a really great shape because they also have kind of that little wedge on the back, so they come out of targets real easy. But when I got them, weighed them all, and I mean, they are pretty spot on when it comes like, no, if you order 100 grains, like you get
They
pretty
come in.
much 100
Yeah.
grain, 125 grain, like whatever you get. The only thing I guess you got to measure up is that's just that diameter. Because that
Yeah.
is important with it. Make sure it matches the outside, either sleeve or, diameter of the arrow.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, if anybody has any questions on what size they need, just give us a call. We've got charts with all the arrows and stuff like that, so we can help find the right one for you.
Well, Casey, thank you for jumping into the Sweet September League. I am
Oh
super
man,
pumped to have you.
we're pumped as well. So I think I might be joining as well. I've got a week long elk hunt in
Let's go,
September, so
baby. I want to
might
hear
be
that
joining in there.
story.
Yeah, should be
I want
good.
to hear
So
that story. Okay. Well, any final words? Anything else you want to share kind of coming from the SEVR world?
I was gonna say, starting in June too, we'll have a couple new broadheads dropping out. So stay tuned for that. Kind of finishing off the hybrid line is what I'll say. So stay tuned. We got some cool stuff down the pipe. We are only online, so just visit us at sevrfreeship.com or give me a call and I can do an order over the phone.
Yeah, and you guys are direct to consumer. You're not going to find this at Shields, Bass Pro. Got to go to SEVR. People start thinking about, well, is this like a custom broadhead? Because people have seen the places that you're getting something where you're paying $50 for a single head. That is not what you're paying with SEVR broadheads, and you sell them individually,
which is super nice because you can pick and choose. Like I can't tell you how many for my Shields days I'd buy a 3-pack. I wanted to try this broadhead, and then I'm like, I hate this broadhead. So I have a box at my house that's just chock full of twos. I've got 2 broadheads here, 2 broadheads there.
That's the exact same as my garage right now.
I don't want to give them to my buddies because I hate them. Why would I want to do that to them? And so the nice part is you can buy one, see if you like it. You can put it in the practice mode, go shoot it, see how it groups for you. If you like more, you can buy more. That's kind of the cool part is you're not stuck in that 3-pot quantity. So if there's anybody out there that wants to try just one, to avoid the shipping price, use code sevrfreeship, all one word. You can purchase just one, get free shipping on it, see how you like it, come back and pick up some more. So
hey, let's go. That's a good deal. Because
yeah.
What are they now? I don't know if you guys have had to adjust for any inflation stuff. I know they were roughly like $15 to $20 a head. Like, is that still ballpark?
Hybrids, hybrids are $20 a head. And then the standard 2 blades, so we have a 1.5, 1.75, 2-inch. Those ones are going to be running about $16.99 a head. Not crazy, about $51 for a 3-pack of the 2 blades, $60 for a 3-pack of the hybrids, and that's probably the cheapest full titanium broadhead you can find on the market. So
heck yeah. Well, just so you know too, Tucker, who I said was just in town doing the NRL Hunter, he's been a SEVR dude as well. So
I know Tucker.
Yeah, you got him at Vortex. Like we were going through pictures, like his whitetail that he got last year just blew a hole right through that whitetail using the SEVR. We will both be running SEVRs this year on our elk setup. So couldn't be more excited. Yeah. All right, man. Thank you so much, Casey. Thanks for introducing yourself to our community. Definitely looking forward to seeing you inside the Sweet September League and having SEVR be a part of it with us this year. It's going to be awesome. Starts June 1st. Doesn't start September 1st. Starts June 1st. So be ready to log workouts, days at the range, all that fun stuff. But definitely excited to have you guys in the Sweet September League. So thank you again for joining us on the HuntLeague podcast.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.